Okay, let's dive right into this history explainer. We're going to reconstruct the final chilling hours of a night that started off perfectly calm but ended in, well, unimaginable tragedy. This is the story of the unsinkable legend and its midnight encounter with nature. Picture this. The night was calm. Honestly, almost too calm. The stars stretched infinitely across the sky, and the ocean looked literally like a sheet of black glass. It was this profoundly serene setting, completely hiding the massive disaster waiting just ahead in the dark. Part 1. The safest ship ever. So on board this giant vessel, the RMS Titanic, you had more than 2,200 passengers and crew, and they all genuinely believed they were sailing on the safest ship ever built by human hands. Up above, people are laughing in these grand dining halls, kids are playing in their cabins, you've got musicians performing while wealthy travelers celebrate, and deep below deck, others are dreaming about the entirely new lives waiting for them in America.
I mean, it was basically a floating city of hope. The ship had already been given this legendary title, practically unsinkable. And that one phrase, it became a giant shield of false security for literally everyone on board.
Which brings us to part 2, the midnight collision. Because, as we know, the ocean simply didn't care. Late that night, lookouts spotted something ahead in the dark water. Iceberg. And just like that, the illusion of safety was over. The warning came incredibly fast. Down on the bridge, the crew desperately yanked the wheel, right? The massive engines were slammed into reverse. But the ship was just too large, and it was already way too late. Now, when the impact actually happened, it wasn't this massive, booming crash like you might expect in a movie. Instead, a long screep echoed through the darkness. Honestly, it sounded almost harmless, as the ice just slid along the side of the hull. So at first, it really didn't seem serious at all. Up above, passengers barely even noticed. Some actually continued eating their late-night meals, while others just stayed warm in bed. But below deck, it's a completely different story. Freezing seawater was already pouring relentlessly into the ship at a truly catastrophic rate. Part 3. Calm becomes fear. So the truth slowly starts spreading from those flooded lower decks up to the passenger areas. This awful realization sets in that, wait, the Titanic wasn't actually built to survive this much damage. Then, the order comes down from above. Prepare the lifeboats. With those 3 words, the unthinkable officially became reality. And that is exactly when the calm completely shattered into absolute fear. Chaos erupted on the decks. Families were suddenly and violently separated in the confusion. Shockingly, some people actually refused to leave, anchoring themselves to the belief that the ship just couldn't sink. And then, the darkest realization hit the crowd. There simply weren't enough lifeboats for everyone on board. It was a deadly shortage. As the agonizing hours passed, the front of the ship slowly dropped further into the Atlantic, and naturally the panic just grew exponentially. You have distress signals and flares shooting high into the dark sky. People are praying, they're crying in the freezing air. And through it all, in honestly one of the most eerie realities of the night, the band kept playing. The freezing water climbed higher and higher into the early hours of April 15th. And then, the impossible happened. Under immense, unimaginable strain, the great ship literally broke apart. One section disappeared completely beneath the ocean's surface. Then the rest followed. Thousands of people were suddenly thrown into the freezing sea. And then, within minutes, the silence returned. After all the chaos, the noise, the sheer terror, nature simply swallowed the disaster whole. Part 4. The Unsinkable Legacy. When rescue ships finally arrived in the morning light, they were met with a truly heartbreaking reality. Only a fraction of the people on board had survived. More than 1,500 lives were lost to the freezing depths. That is just a staggering, tragic number. So what does this all mean for us? Well, the Titanic became much more than just a shipwreck. It became a profound, really humbling lesson. A permanent reminder that no machine, no matter how advanced or how hyped up, is ever greater than the raw power of nature. Now, over 100 years later, people obviously still remember the night the unsinkable ship sank. But it leaves us with a critical question to chew on. Have we truly learned that no machine can conquer nature? Or, are we still putting way too much faith in our own creations today? Think about that. If you enjoyed this History Explainer, make sure to follow for our next untold story.